So this is a bit of a kind of unusual thing for Lana and I, because we're both, pretty confident talking to people. We spend quite a lot of time doing talks, but normally we're talking about digital marketing or plugging Brighton digital women. So this is a bit more of an unusual thing, because today we're talking about mental health. So I think both of us have found this slightly more difficult than we kind of thought we were going to. It's not something that we're used to talking about. It's a little bit different, but as Alice said, we really thought it was important because it's such it's something that people don't talk about, and we really want to see more people discussing it and talking it more openly. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our stories. So for me, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 12, but then basically spent the next 15 years running away from that diagnosis and trying to avoid it, because of the stigma behind it, because I thought that that would be a terrible thing for anyone to know about me, and it would just be, horrific. And I was prescribed medication, which I took for a bit, but then thought, I don't want to be the kind of person who's on depression medication, so just really abruptly stopped taking it. If, by the way, you ever are prescribed medication and you want to stop it, do it gradually under the supervision of a doctor, not, just immediately, because that's not good for you, as I discovered. And I really wanted there to be another reason for it that wasn't my own head. So I looked for other things that could be wrong, that could be the problem. So I left relationships, I left jobs, I left cities, and just kept moving around the country and generally just trying to get away from stuff, basically trying to run away from what was going on in my own head. And it took a really long time to figure out that you can't do that, and that's why I things like this I think are so important, to actually talk about it and discuss it and say that it is okay for for you to experience those feelings. But more on that later. I'll let Lana tell you a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Allegra. So from a very young age, I always had this sort of nagging feeling that there was something wrong with me. I was often told that I was hypersensitive, or that, maybe I just reacted more to things happening around me than others did, perhaps. But it wasn't until I was about 13 that I started to experience sort of real anxiety. And I had a period of insomnia at about the age of 13 or 14. And I didn't really know what that was. I just knew I couldn't sleep, and I knew that I didn't feel right, but I didn't have the vocabulary of, this is anxiety, I'm feeling anxious. I just didn't feel right. But it passed, and I started to feel better. But then when I was 15 and 16, I started to experience sort of much more dark periods of depression. And again, I didn't really have the vocabulary to express exactly what was right, but I went from being a very, very bubbly, outspoken sort of person to someone who didn't communicate a lot and, looked very sort of down, furrowed brow. It's a weird thing how, I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but for me, my mood comes out of my face quite directly. So, teachers around me, my ballet teacher, the receptionist at my ballet school even, noticed changes in how I was. And then from 16 to 25, I experienced sort of 3 to 4 month periods of this deep depression every year, followed by brief periods of recovery, and then things got better, and then they got even better, and then they kept getting better to a point that I actually became quite high. So it turned out that I was not only experiencing depression on an annual basis, but I was also experiencing periods of mania. So it felt a bit like a roller coaster. I describe it as I was sort of plummeting down towards the bottom at quite a lot of speed. I became depressed quite quickly, and And as I gained momentum along the bottom, I always kind of, although I was depressed, I still had part of me that was fighting to get better, and that sort of momentum carried me up into becoming well. But then I sort of, with the speed of having gone down so fast, I sort of spiralled up out of control into a period of mania that sort of tipped over, and then down I went again. So I had my two most sort of severe manic episodes in the summer of 2011, and then in the autumn of 2012. This was around the time that I was finishing my law degree at Sussex, which I did eventually get. 2-1 in law from Sussex, so that was quite a relief, because I didn't actually think that I was ever going to graduate. But anyway, so yeah, I had those two really quite severe manic episodes, and it wasn't until the manic episode in 2012 that actually landed me under section in Millview Hospital, that I was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So it took it getting really very severe to be able to access the help that I needed, and this was not without reaching out for that help and asking for that help, and going to the doctor and reporting what was going on and being in contact with services, but unfortunately I wasn't able to actually access them in a way that helped me until I actually lost my freedom for a week, which I'm sure you can imagine was really bloody terrifying. So yeah, that was a long time ago. It's now very well managed through a combination of yoga, philosophy, medication and music. I'm able to stabilise my mood, and through the great communities and support networks that I have around me, having sort of met Rachel when she first founded Brighton Digital Women, and Allegra and I have helped her to grow that community. That has really, really helped me find my people and have a sense of connectedness around me. So that's just the introduction to my story, but we're going to talk now about accepting and how acceptance has helped us.
So the kind of point behind this slide is what I basically eventually came to realise is that you can't learn how to swim if you're in the middle of drowning. So whereas I was busy kind of trying to avoid the diagnosis and run away from everything, I wasn't accepting any help, I didn't want to be on medication, I was basically just ignoring everything. And nothing is ever going to get better if you're in the middle of that. So what you need to do is grab hold of the life raft and let it pull you out of the water, and then you can start to put everything back together. So for me, that was about accepting that it's okay to have an illness, and a mental illness isn't any different to a physical illness. You would get treatment if there was something wrong with you physically, so why was I not accepting the treatment I needed for something that was wrong with my brain, which at the end of the day is still a physical issue. Basically my brain just doesn't produce enough of a certain chemical. So I finally, after several kind of emotional incidents, decided that it was time to actually accept the help, take the medication, and then at that point that gave me a lot more clarity and space to start putting my head back together and figuring out how to fix the rest of my life. What putting this talk together made me realise is that I'm probably not as far along in that process as I thought I was, because there was a lot of me that was like, I'm fine talking about mental health, this is cool, I totally got this. And then I started putting this together, and we did a Facebook Live discussion for BelongCon as well, and I was suddenly like, oh, I don't think I'm as okay as I thought I was. This is actually quite stressful. But it's made me realise that there's still a way to go, and that there's still a lot that I can do to help myself. And okay, I've taken the first step, I'm not in the water anymore, pulled myself out, learned how to swim, but there's still a lot that I could be doing. And so I have made a lot more steps forward now, partly inspired by Lana, with meditation, with yoga, with all those sorts of things to try and help myself and kind of take myself forward. But really for me, I think it's been about just accepting that it's okay to have an illness and to also have an issue and to need treatment and to need help for it, and take the help and get what you need and look after yourself and put yourself first.
So my path to acceptance was a difficult one, because before I was actually diagnosed, I was bloody terrified of being diagnosed with anything and having a diagnosis on my medical records. Particularly at the time, because I was studying law and I wanted to become a human rights barrister, I got it into my head that somehow having this label attached to me would hinder me in my career and would be this terribly awful thing to be on my record, as it were. But it turns out that that hasn't been the case at all. Whilst I don't feel defined by the label of bipolar, and I don't say I am bipolar, I say I have been diagnosed with bipolar. I had found that having a diagnosable mental health condition was actually an enormous relief, because it sort of freed me from what I had been worrying about, which was that I was somehow uniquely damaged in a way that was, so dramatic and so different and so awful and unspeakable. But actually it's not unspeakable, it's really, really quite normal. Bipolar isn't particularly a rare mental health condition, and knowing the sort of nature of the beast has really helped free me. Having bipolar as a diagnosis has allowed me to become an observer. I feel that I now, if I become unwell or start to become unwell, I feel that I'm watching Lana experience the symptoms of an illness, as opposed to being sort of trapped in some unknown thing. So having this diagnosis and accepting this diagnosis has brought a sort of sense of calm and distance from what's happening. And that distance has allowed me to find space, to find my own ways to manage the condition. And I'd say that medication for me has been an enormous help. I don't think that it's necessarily the sole thing that helps, but medication has allowed me to have the space to get that distance from the illness in order to discover yoga, to discover that actually I can moderate my mood by Spotify playlists, and to discover reading philosophy, which has been an amazing help, realising that the troubles that we have with our minds, people were having thousands of years ago. None of this is new, none of this is unique. This is part of the human experience, and whilst at the moment we might put a label on the certain set of symptoms that I experience and call it bipolar disorder, this is just the current label that it has. These things that I'm experiencing, that many other people are experiencing, are not unique and not new. They're thousands of years old. So that has really helped me.
So I think we're kind of running out of time, but try and just kind of talk a little bit about how we've kind of progressed onto the next stage and give our kind of words of wisdom on moving forward and really kind of owning and almost being empowered by these conditions. Because I think for both Lana and I, we kind of went through that period of feeling like it said something really bad about us, and it kind of was a really negative thing to have around us, and actually we've both come to kind of really feel like we own that now, and it's part of us, and we're good and bad, an equal mixture as is everyone else, and this is just one aspect of who we are. So I think the kind of key things for me were around just being honest with yourself about what you're going through, what you're experiencing, and being aware of what your symptoms are, learning how to recognise those symptoms, understanding when you are going through periods of feeling unwell, understanding what triggers there might be, and being able to kind of take yourself out of those situations, or give yourself the space to experience those feelings and recover from them. And looking at kind of if there is an underlying cause, if there is something that you can deal with, or equally if there isn't, because sometimes there is no cause to it. And I think a lot of us try and track down a reason, but it's okay if there isn't one. And that's just part of working through it. But the really kind of key thing I think for both of us was learning how to put our own well-being above everything else, including the kind of preconceived ideas we had of what success looked like. And I think both of us are quite driven career women, and we feel like we've got to be on the go all the time, and actually accepting the fact that sometimes it's okay to not be doing everything at a million miles an hour. It is okay sometimes to just step back and go, I don't really feel up to this today. I'm going to just give myself some time and some space, and I don't have to always be a high achieving, the best at everything. I can give myself that space to kind of back away. And the kind of really important thing for me was learning that it's not my fault that this has happened, but it is my responsibility to look after myself and to deal with the consequences of it, because I have ended relationships, ruined friendships, done all sorts of things, and it's on me now to fix that. It might not have been my fault, but it's me that's got to kind of deal with that and look after the repercussions.
Yeah, I think that part about owning the consequences of your actions when you're unwell is really, really important. It's not necessarily your fault, but it is your life that you need to step back into and that you need to try to rebuild. So I think being able to take responsibility for your behaviour when you're unwell or when you're well is really, really important in a non-judgmental way of yourself. Like you don't need to be judging or feeling guilty for, but you just need to be dealing practically with the results of your behaviour. And I think the other thing for me about owning your mental health condition is you really can turn it into a strength, because when you are honest and open with yourself and with other people, you're able to achieve a real degree of self-awareness and insight that actually puts you possibly in a stronger position than some people who don't have a diagnosable mental health condition, because you're constantly checking in with yourself, you're constantly assessing how you are, how you're being with other people, which sometimes people aren't aware of. So actually you can turn that diagnosis and that constant need to monitor and that constant need to put your well-being first, you can turn that into a strength, and it can help you to be a better person and to help those around you.
So really, really quickly, we've shared a bit about our stories, but what we'd really like to see is more people sharing their stories and more people breaking down the stigma around mental health, talking about their experiences, so that people realise that actually this is way more normal than we think it is. In terms of doing that, I think Dan spoke really brilliantly about the way to have those conversations and being able to listen to people, but I think it's quite a difficult thing to learn how to do, to give people the space to talk about things like that, because it is scary and it does make you feel a bit like that cat, and it's a kind of uncomfortable thing to have, but being able to just kind of step back and give people that space. And one thing that I really struggle with is people, when they know that you have depression, is they kind of go, well, what's wrong? And it's like, well, nothing, like there isn't a thing. So I think it's kind of, rather than trying to ask questions like that, just kind of be a bit more open about the open-ended with the question. So it's not what's wrong, it's are you okay? Do you need anything? Just being kind of giving people that space to tell you as much or as little as they feel comfortable. And actually, if the answer to are you okay is no, that's all right. They just want you to be there and to listen. So that's not a bad thing. And the really, really key thing for me, I mentioned a bit earlier, was kind of learning to think about the symptoms of my depression in the same way that I would think about the symptoms of a physical illness. Because to me, it isn't really any different. I think if any of my friends had diabetes or something, I would be aware of, okay, they need to do this to kind of keep an eye on it, they need to watch out for this if they see this, it's the same thing, and there isn't really any issue. There are, things that I can now recognise that, okay, this is a sign that I'm not feeling great today, I should probably, give myself a bit of space. And that's the same kind of thing. And I think the really key thing is to breaking down that stigma is when we can all look at mental illness on the same par with physical illness and treat them both in a similar way.
So I'm sorry that we've gone a little over time, but I hope that through sharing our stories, we might have empowered you to share yours with the people around you if you haven't already. We have put a real emphasis on well-being throughout 2017 as part of what we do with Brighton Digital Women. So if you do have stories to share, particularly about well-being at work, we would love for you to write a blog for us. Get in touch with us on Twitter at BTN Digital Women, or come and speak to Allegra or I or Rachel at the end. So thank you so much.